The useEffect hook allows you to perform side effects in your component. Example, assuming you have an API somewhere and every time this application runs, you want the user to see all the countries in the world with their flags. We are going to see how these are going to play out using our useEffect and REST API. Let us go straight to it. So we have our application running once again. This is part of the application we were making use of before. If you remember when we did episode, we did some things using this form and we explained how to make use of forms. But today we're talking about useEffect. So here we have our home page. But then what we have is that when this application loads, we don't just want to see home page here. We want to see all the countries of the world and their flags. And to get this done, I have an API here called countriesnow.space. It has a collection of all the countries of the world with their population, location, flag, currencies, capital, and all of that. But the one we're going to make use of is this particular one right here, the flag. And you can say get countries and Unicode flags, and get countries and flags. And here we have, this is the particular API we're going to make use of. This is an operation. This particular operation contains almost, if not all, component lifecycle we talked about. In the past, we would have written a number of code to represent them or to get things done. But right now, we just have to use useEffect. useEffect. So what do I need to do next? I need to first of all import useEffect from React. Or I can just simply, having React here already, I can just say useEffect. So okay, just take this one off. This is still the same thing right here. So I'm going to say, because I want this information, because I want this data, I want this country thing to display instantly once this application mounts. So I'm going to say useEffect right here. But that's not all. It's a callback function, which means we are going to put our fat arrow right here, curly brackets, and then we're going to run our application. Then we're going to put the code that is going to call our API right here. So the next thing we need to do right now is we need to, some people, if you like, you can just do it direct, but I prefer to create another function right inside here, and I will say function, let's say get country, and get country is a function that will do the following for us. Now going to write our code here. So to consume this API, we need something, although there are traditional ways of getting it done, but I use Axios, right? So the next thing we need to do right here, we need to install Axios. Axios helps us to call API, to process API, get API, post API, and perform a lot of operations. Once we have to make use of external data and external API, Axios helps us to perform all the fetch operations in a more organized manner. So to do that, I'm going to install Axios. So let's get to, so first thing I need to do is I'm going to say npm install Axios, and then we simply sip our coffee while it installs, and then it is done. So once it's done, right now I can simply import Axios from Axios. So now the next thing I need to do right here, I need to say Axios dot get, because we are getting information right now from the API, so we're going to use the get, and then we put bracket here. Right here we're going to put the link where we're getting the information from, and that link is this one right here, because we are getting countries and flags. So this is the link is giving us. So we paste this link here, but that's not all. When we get this, we are going to tell our code what to do next. So we say .then perform another operation, but I can just bring in this, then bring it this here, still the same thing. So but then we say we want you to do the following. We want to use something to represent this information we are going to get from here. So let's call that thing response. So this information, this response here, is going to represent all the information we're going to get from here. So we're using response to represent it. Some people will say res. You can call it data if you want, anything you like. I use response a lot. So when you get this response, I want you to do the following. Now let us create. We don't want to do the following. Okay. Oh, sorry. Response like this. At this point, we need a state, right? When we bring in this data, all of these countries, we have to hand it over to a state so that the state will hold it for us. And then through that state, we'll be able to see what we have just called, right? We'll see the information and the data we just called, right? So what I need to do right now, I need to tell our computer, I need to tell our code and say const data equals to use state, but in the meantime it should have empty initial variable. But that's not just all. We can't just call it data. We need a function through which we can update this data. So we call that function set data. Now if this is confusing to you, then probably you shouldn't be here. You should check this channel. I've talked about use state. I've talked about couple of foundational topics. So just check the use state tutorial, and you're going to find the link to that tutorial in the description box in the description box of this video. So let's proceed. But then I don't have use state imported into this project yet, so I need to import use state. And to do that, I can just do that right here. I say comma use state, or if I so like, I can still say import use state from React, right? So therefore that would be quite repetitive, so there's no point of doing that. I'll just put it right here. Use state. So I'm going to say, when this is done, I want you to update this data variable here using what you get from the response. So response.data, right? So this information is going to be stored in response, and the entire thing we are looking for is in response.data. So just say populate this variable with response.data. So but that's not all. Okay, so now we have declared our function, and our function runs. So whenever this component mounts, this function here runs, but not yet. For this to run, we have to come over here and say get country. So now it runs, right? So the moment this application loads, the moment this application mounts, this guy here runs. And the reason why it does that is because we are using useEffect, right? It's as simple as that. We're using useEffect, so that is what useEffect is going to cause to happen in this application. Let us continue. You are going to enjoy this. So, but that's not all, right? That is something I don't want to do. You can try it on your own, right? So you can just try this. If you run this application this way, right? Because this API, there's a number of calls we can make per day. Okay, some APIs gives you 100 calls per 100 calls per day. Some gives you 1,000, some gives you 1,000. But of course, if it is API that you pay for, they might give you a particular number of 1,000 calls to make per day on the API. All right. in this particular one, I don't want to do this because I don't know how many calls we are giving. All right, it's not stated, but please, you can just try it. If you run this code this way, all right, this particular code here is going to run so many times, too many times. It will run repeatedly until you run out of the number of calls you're supposed to make. The reason is that is how this guy here behaves. Now, I'm going to explain something critical right here for you. Please pay attention. Every time you're making use of useState, right? Every time you're making use of useState renders the application. All right, but in most cases we can't do without it. We have to use it regardless. But useState, it renders your application, it reloads your application, right, without you knowing. So every time you're making use of useState, for example, in this case, I said useEffect. So every time, once this component mounts, this guy here runs. But then, after it gets this data from this address, it updates our state here, this state data. So the moment it updates this state here data, this application re-renders. So it means it reloads. And when it reloads, what do you think will happen? This useEffect will run again. And when it runs again, it runs this function, and this function is right here. It gets data from this address, right? And then that address from this address, and with that address, we are telling it to store in this data right here, because really we need this state, right? But this state causes this application to render again. And when it renders again, what do you think will happen? useEffect will run again. So you have this code running repeatedly over and over and over. The first time I started making use of useState, I made this mistake, right? It ran over and over, and I was given only 50 calls to make in that particular API, and that was how I exhausted that 50 API calls without having to make use of it in my application. Now, like I said, I don't want to run this to show you what I'm saying. If you have been following this application, this development, you can go ahead and run it, all right? Because if I do this, I might not be able to continue with this tutorial because I don't know how many API calls I'm given to make here. I don't know. I haven't, and I wouldn't want to test it right now, because if I do it, I won't be able to continue with the tutorial, right? Yeah. So to prevent this from running over and over again. Now, so to prevent this from happening, I really hope you understand this. But please, the code to this application is going to be in the description box, so you can just click the link in the description box and download the code so you can make use of it, right? And test out what I'm trying to say. So to stop this from happening, I'm going to put I'm going to put something here. I'm going to put this comma here, and then I'm going to tell this guy to run just once. So what this means is I want this guy to run once. So once the first one runs, it's not going to render again and run again. That is how we prevent it from happening, right? So let us save this, and then let's just say, to see what we have, let's just say console.log data. So let us see in the console what this guy here has, right? Save it, and then let's check our application. Let's inspect it. So we have an object here, and this object, let's see what it has. We have a long array, 200. So we have name, country, Afghanistan, flag. You can see the address of the flag, right? And then have name, Albania. So we have it this way all through, right? You see there are too many countries right here. So that means since we have this data right here now, it means we can now go ahead and make use of it, right? So to make use of it, you know what, instead of using data, because I think this will confuse you, but this is just a state variable, right? Let's call it country, and let's call this one set country. So let me not have data here so that I don't confuse you. So instead of having this here, I wanna say call this country, right? Let's check it out. Set data. We don't have set data. Oh, So we now need to say set country now. But now we can see that it has 3 items, right? It has 3 specific items. One is data, one is error, and one is message. So error is showing false, so there's no error. We don't have any error. So it is returning 3 items in this 3 items in this object, and then the object item that has the data we are looking for is actually this data here. Okay, so that is actually what we need. So let's check something. Let's say country.data, and let's check it showing us. You see, we no longer have the error or the message showing. What we have right here right now is just only the data we need, only the countries and everything that they have to offer. Let's push this a little bit further. Right, this is an array. Okay. Sorry, I made a change. Initially we had this, right? We had empty string as the initial string of this, but that is wrong actually, because since what we are going to have in it is an array, so it should be an array. Okay, now the next thing we need to do right now is let's show that this is an array, right? We have items, and these items are numbered, right? We have these numbers to 220. Actually, these are more like storage keys in the array. Then if I say data, I want to console log data 7. Let's check something first. One is Argentina, and here is the link to their flag. So let us check only data number 7, right? So let's check what we are going to have in the console. Now we have only Argentina, right? And if we say number 70, we're going to have this occupying, and that is Gambia, right? So, and if you check here number 70, you're going to see Gambia. But then we can, this is not how we are going to access the data, right? We want all of this information display in our application, not like this, right? And we don't have to start saying display number 1, display number 2, display number 3. So what do we need to do about this, right? Since this is an array, we just have to map into it, right? And if you remember when we talked about mapping, that is just what we're going to do right here. But before I do that, let me bring in some of the classes I created. The grid container. Let me bring in the classes I created so we can make this look better. So right here now we need to say country.data.map, right? So we need to map into this and then when we map into it, every item in this array we want to represent it with this word here, item. So this represents every item we have in this place. So you can call it data or call it item, anything you like, right? So call it item, and this item, every time once we get this item, we want to render a div that has a class name. I have a class name already in my CSS, so I wanted to return this div. Yeah, so I want to return this div, and I wanted to show item.name, right? We can see that every item has a name. The name is the country itself, and then the flag represents the image of the flag. So let's have the name first. So we just want name. Let's check our application and see what's going on. Let's say now we have all the countries in the world represented. Okay, so let's find a way to show the flag too. We just don't want to see just the name, but we also want to see the flag, right? So what we need to do, we need to say don't just show this, also So on an image, the source should be item.flag, and then alternative message. Let's check this out. Let's check this out. Oh, we have all the countries and the flag. The flag is quite big, so let's do something about that. So let's say let's say 50px. All right, so we have it like that. We have it now, right? So we can see every country with their flag displayed. Thank you. This is where we come to the end of this particular tutorial, and I just want you to follow me. If you like what I'm doing here, please click on like, share the video, subscribe, tell people about this channel. Let us grow this community. See you and bye bye.